And then Jerry, once you start your introduction and everything, I'll pull up the slide deck and then we'll get going.
Okay, we'll give it just a minute because it says, Terry, why don't you give me a thumbs up when the majority are in? Because since they can't see us, or will you know?
I will.
Okay, someone, yeah, because nobody will see us. If you give me a thumbs up, because I'll give them a chance to enter before I speak.
Okay, we're 2 minutes late. Here we go.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Partners and the Brain Injury Association of North Carolina and our presentation on traumatic brain injury, information, resources, and supports. We're going to start with a few housekeeping things. This session is being recorded, and if you would use the question and answer features instead of the chat mechanism, that has been disabled. Also, as we go along, we will be offering some opportunities for some prizes for individuals. Just take the survey questions throughout. And at the end of the session, we will have a survey link available. And if you take the survey, there will be an opportunity to win a really nice prize at the end. So with that, we're going to go ahead and get started with our presentation. Lauren Costello is our first speaker, and she serves as the North Carolina statewide training coordinator with the Brain Injury Association of North Carolina. After Lauren gets done, Sandy Pendergraph, who also works with the Brain Injury Association of North Carolina, and she serves as a neuro resource facilitator and outreach coordinator. So if you would, please welcome both Lauren and Sandy.
Hey there, everybody. Thank you so much. As mentioned, I'm Lauren. I'm going to be starting us off today talking a little bit about brain injury, going to be going through some of the next steps and what you guys can do to live fully after brain injury. I think brain injury is often considered the silent epidemic because many of its effects are not necessarily seen by the naked eye. They're not easily seen. You can't see how someone thinks or talks. And so living in the community after a brain injury can be really challenging because there's no perfect roadmap to how to navigate this new life and the services that are needed to encourage rehabilitation. And so brain injury can affect everyone differently. It's often, caused by those disruptions of normal brain functions, either by like an external source, and that's that traumatic brain injury, or an internal source. And so those common causes what we see in traumatic brain injury is often, falls, traffic collisions, violence, blasts. For some, they may experience a more mild form of traumatic brain injury or a concussion, and that can be sometimes difficult to detect or identify because someone may not even black out or lose consciousness. A lot of times you hear people, oh, I just got my bell rung, or other types of things. And then they start seeing, within a week or so, some, concussion symptoms that could really impact daily life. And this is true for individuals that already have brain injury. You're actually more likely to sustain an additional brain injury like a concussion. And so we want to make sure that we're keeping an eye out for, after you've experienced a brain injury, that you're looking out and being cautious about more brain injuries. Others that experience more moderate to severe brain injury can result in a period of coma, or that like long period of unconsciousness state, where they're in the hospital for longer periods of time. But regardless of the initial severity of traumatic brain injury, the resulting changes can often affect how someone moves, processes information, speaks, and how they feel. And it can often not just impact the person, but the entire family or support system, whatever that looks like. And there are many factors that can influence how long these symptoms or how prevalent these symptoms are in a person. People's journey with a brain injury often begin with, some sort of emergency support, emergency setting, either emergency department or with emergency medical services, or you might have heard them as like EMS, to help with detecting that brain injury, but with a main focus of medical stability and reducing any sort of secondary complications like bleeding, swelling, bruising, or removing any sort of objects that have gotten into the brain. Others that experience kind of those medical or physical complications and are looking for kind of that diagnosis might find it in more community-based medical support. So maybe, especially if they've experienced like a mild traumatic brain injury or something like that, or they've experienced a moderate to severe brain injury and are now back in the community. What do you do? How do I find help? And that's what's you're gonna find that help with those medical supports. So either like they're called a physiatrist or rehabilitation physician. Maybe even your primary care physician can provide help for you, or a lot of times a neurologist can help with challenges like headaches or seizures, pain, things that are common after a brain injury. Different specialists can focus on different areas. So, it's important you can always contact us and we can help navigate you towards the right one. But then they're often fast paced and really symptom focused. So they want to know like what's wrong, and they want to know how long it's been, and all these things. So it's really important throughout this process that you're, taking notes, maybe bringing a support person with you to help remember information. And at all times, basically always be asking for a written summary at the end of the visit, or something that they can provide you with that you can keep with you, and keep a log of what they said, what your next steps are, based on them. Especially if you're given any sort of medication or new prescription, you're going to want all of the information with that in terms of administration, when you take that drug, what you take it with, any sort of side effects that are common. You're really going to want to kind of know all of that information. Other types of services that might be helpful, some of those next steps, if you've experienced a brain injury, or newly brain injury, or something that's happened for a long time, there are diagnostic supports. So that's basically diagnosing a brain injury, giving me the evidence that I need to be able to identify that there's changes within my brain. And so even in an emergency, or, if you go to the neurologist, they might send you out for these type of diagnostic testing, additional scans that might help you see what's actually going on in the brain. And there are different types of brain scans that might be done after a brain injury. You might have heard of CT or MRI or EEG. Each one of these scans are looking for different things that are happening within the brain, whether it's blood flow, whether it's actual structural damage, and different ones offer different clarity, and they're different opportunities to see changes within the brain. But keep in mind that mild brain injuries, those concussions, might not always be picked up on these brain scans. They might have very, very detailed changes. That doesn't necessarily mean that your experience isn't real, but it means that the specific scan that you took is not necessarily for those mild injuries. We see that a lot with like CT scans. People have injuries, have a concussion, have a car accident, then they go to the hospital and they, get a CT scan and it's normal. So they figure, I'm good to go. I don't have a brain injury. I don't have a concussion. But that CT scan is really only looking for excess bleeding, excess swelling, just the structural damage, not necessarily how the brain communicates within itself, and the blood flow within the brain, which basically influences how quickly you think, how your brain functions, how you're able to act on your decisions, those type of things. There are also other types of testing that you can get access to, like so for a full comprehensive testing, looking at behaviors, cognition, just everything that how your brain injury might impact you. There's something called neuropsychological testing or neuropsychological assessments, and so those can be really beneficial. They're extremely long and detailed, but that's a good thing because then you're able to take that information and be able to access specific supports because you have that specific either brain injury diagnosis, but then they also look at how those different areas of functioning are affected. And therefore, you're able to look at different strategies and different community supports that might address those specific things. In any sort of testing that you do, diagnostic testing, scans, neuropsych assessments, you're going to want to keep all of that paperwork. You want to try and make sure that you're keeping a detailed log and a detailed record of everything so that you might be able to use them later when you're connecting to community resources, services, or for particular funding options. And so that goes into kind of one of my first steps after a brain injury. You're going to want to make sure that you're getting organized. You're keeping your paperwork all together and in a safe place. You're investigating what provider source, the funding source of each provider that you're like looking at, and obviously connecting with your care manager to be able to make sure that any resource that you're connecting with fits into that kind of funding option and funding source. Recording your calls and the caller. So make sure that you're writing notes of the people that you called, who you talked with, what you learned from, and if you're not, it might be helpful to set a reminder in like your phone or in your planner to say, if I haven't heard back from them, call them back. People are typically really busy, so I wouldn't take it as, take it personally, but it is a way to get that going. And setting reminders for appointments. So if you do, you're on the phone, you're scheduling an appointment, making sure that you're setting a reminder to help you get those. And so for many after a brain injury, those changes that we mentioned, physical, cognitive, emotional, social, those are really just the surface when it comes to symptoms that can impact a person. What we actually see is that it changes how a person might live their daily lives, their relationships that they have access to, getting a job, their sense of identity, and how they can engage with the community, where this is where we see a lot of lingering impact after a brain injury, depending on the person. So once you get organized after a brain injury, one of your next steps is to gather a team behind you. You definitely don't have to be doing this alone. And it's really important to reach out to those in your community, friends, families. A lot of times after a brain injury, many individuals are being reached out to, oh, let me know if I can help, let me know. But a lot of times you're just trying to be in problem solving mode, looking at what's in front of you. And it can be hard to delegate those specific tasks or even know what in the world I need help with because I'm just trying to get through the day, if not the hour. So as much as you can, maybe you can even designate someone that you trust to be able to do those delegation tasks to give, if there's something that is bogging you down, maybe someone else can help out with those. And I did want to kind of encourage you to look at some of our toolkits that we just launched in March. One of them is Taking on Independence, and that's got schedules, it's got checklists, it's got materials to help keep you organized. And also there's a specific section on assigning tasks for caregivers and other individuals living with brain injury, just to help out a little bit more so they don't have to feel alone. And we also have another one called with acronym and common terms for advocacy. When you're forming your team, try and use technology to try and keep everyone updated. You can always use like a Facebook group, or there are specific caregiver websites out there that can help. But when you're educating your team, be sure to look at some of our programs. We have an online webinar series, a podcast. These are just all different ways that you can learn a little bit more about brain injury. And then you can also take a look at our new Brain Talks Q&A session. That's question and answers. If you have a question, will answer it. You can find that on our website. And then the Thriving Survivor daily activities might be really helpful for when you're forming your team. Maybe you want someone to be able to, you want to engage, or you want your loved one to engage in a specific activity. That's what these Thriving Survivor activity classes are. And so you could have someone stay and sit with your loved one or sit with you while someone else is able to go do chores or groceries or something like that. So you can use kind of our programs and tools to help you form the team around you so that you don't have to feel like it's all on you, whether you're the individual living with a brain injury, someone that is caring for someone with a brain injury, or maybe if you're a professional that a caregiver that works with people with brain injury. And so the next step, I would say, is connecting to community services. Find out what services are there, identify with certain support groups, whether in your area or now that a lot of things have gone virtual, you can always do that. Don't be afraid to push yourself. It might feel really uncomfortable at first. Know your limits, make sure that you're incorporating breaks and rest and not overwhelming yourself by any means, but try and, start small, do like little steps towards that community engagement. And you can always connect with specific services to help you get stronger. I have some, if you're interested in getting the slides here, I can get them for you. But I want to make sure that Sandy has enough time too. So, rehabilitation as supports to help you get stronger. Make sure that you're not just looking at the traditional, physical therapy, PT, OT, occupational therapy, or speech therapy, but also investigate the use of recreational therapists, vestibular therapists, art therapy, music therapy, animal assisted therapy. These might not necessarily be covered under your specific funding source, but there might be additional funding options that might help you access these supports and help you in your rehabilitation process in a little bit different way. So don't get discouraged if it's not necessarily working out for you in some sort of way. Try something else. I think that's a lot with individuals with brain injuries. That sort of trial and error is going to be a big process of figuring out what works best for you. And that comes a lot too with the mental health supports. I highly encourage getting connected to those with to help with focusing on feelings, emotion, someone to talk to. If you're not necessarily interested in kind of that one-on-one therapy route, you can connect to support groups to help with peer support, as well as connection to local resources. Day supports are available, like I mentioned, the virtual day program, but there are other day programs available to help you if you're in that kind of middle period of like, I'm not necessarily ready to go to work, but I want to do something during the day. I want to have more meaningful activity. And so day programs can be a really good way for that, clubhouses, that sort of thing. And again, looking to see if there's virtual options if they're not necessarily in your specific area. Even if you're not able to do day programs, if maybe that's even too much, start by planning out your day and making sure that you have chunks of productivity, about maybe 50 minutes or so, 30 minutes if you need even less, and then incorporating a break or relaxation period for about 5 to 20 minutes depending on the person. Living supports, you can always look at assistive technology, independent living programs, employment services, or school and education disability programs to help you live more independently. For those with additional needs, you might look at personal care, you can look at companion care, and they can help with your daily activities of living. Then there's potential residential supports. There's different levels of really support. So try and kind of create a list of what are the things that you need help with or that need a little bit more support in, and what do you not. If it's not necessarily medical support that you need, then maybe look at some of those more supportive living environments instead of those like medical nursing environments. And lastly, looking at any sort of services that you can have for assistance and help with advocacy, whether that's legal, guardianship, social services, or other types of access, accessing the community. Those can be really helpful for getting help. And the last thing I'll mention is just strategizing, finding ways to make life easier, accommodate for challenges, determining your goals and the next steps to get there, and living your healthiest that you can be. Specifically after a brain injury, it's even more important that you make healthy life decisions because your brain is working at twice the trying to compensate for those challenges. And it's really important to give it the nutrients that it needs, and do that in specific ways so that you can rehabilitate faster. And I'll leave you with these kind of different strategies. Make sure that you're listening. You have awareness to like your surroundings or learning styles, making sure that everything is really concrete and tangible, identifying any sort of behavioral stressors, having patience, being mindful of fatigue, adjusting your communication style to add pauses, speak clearly, expect to repeat or rephrase information. Try not to get too frustrated with that because that's sort of just part of the course with memory. Simplifying, keeping simple sentences, emphasizing building routines, and lastly, always really engaging, connecting to the community when you can, building in structural supports, adjusting meeting schedules if you need, and above all, meeting either the person where they are if you're not the individual living with brain injury, but if you're the person living with a brain injury, also meet yourself where you're at. It's okay to be not okay sometimes, and give yourself the grace to have a rest day. You don't always have to be rehabilitating and busy all the time, and just kind of give yourself the grace and understand that you've made a lot of progress already. So I really appreciate your time, your energy. Again, if you have any specific questions, more for me, just feel free to contact me and I'll turn it over to Sandy.
Okay, thank you, Lauren. If Beth would put up my slides. Good afternoon. My name is Sandy Pendergrass, and as Jerry stated previously, I am the Neuro Resource Facilitator and Outreach Coordinator for the Brain Injury Association of North Carolina. I'm very pleased to be here today with you. I want to talk with you today a little bit about supports and statewide resources. Next slide. But first, who are our caregivers? Well, caregivers can be anyone who provides support and services for individuals needing extra assistance. And turn my camera off. I'm having some connection issues. They are professionals, the doctors, nurses, nursing assistants, speech therapists, OT, PT, etc. They can also be the informal or unpaid caregivers, such as family members, friends, or anyone who provides ongoing support with everyday tasks. Informal caregivers are the one I want to discuss today. Next slide. Well, I don't think we have this link available, but it was going to link to the CDC fact sheet regarding caregivers, and I encourage you to look that up. Go to cdc.gov and type in complete care plan. What this plan does, well, I'm sorry, this is the fact sheet. This fact sheet was developed in 2015 to 16, and it's under the CDC website. It found that 1 in 5 adults are caregivers. Caregivers can be lengthy. Caregiving can be lengthy, as half of people surveyed have been providing care for at least 2 years. 30% provided care for at least 20 hours per week. According to this survey, 4 out of 5 managed household tasks, and over half assisted with personal care. 58% were women, 20% were 65 or older, and 37% cared for the parent or parent-in-law, and nearly 10% were providing care for someone with dementia. This is on that fact sheet for CDC. Also, 1 in 6 who were not currently a caregiver expected to be one in the next 2 years. Okay, so Beth, you can stay on this slide. Caregiving is universal. Approximately 22.3% of the population aged 45 and over provides some type of regular care or assistance to a family member or friend due to medical issues or because of a disabling condition. North Carolina rates 23.9% according to the survey. That's 1 in 4 women and 1 in 5 men. Okay, next slide. Does caregiving have an impact on the person given the care? Yes, it does, both in positive and negative ways. There is a sense of fulfillment due to providing the care, actually taking care of someone and making his or her life better. There are also social networks that some caregivers join to discuss their caregiving role with others who have the same experiences. They learn from others and develop friendships. There is a feeling of usefulness and being needed. Just everyone enjoys helping others. Oftentimes, there becomes a new meaning of life or self and others. Your life changes once you become a caregiver, and there's often self-reflection involved. On the negative side, there is sometimes depression, anxiety, a decline in your physical health, and maybe even your immune system may be compromised. It is recommended that you as a caregiver take the time to take care of yourself. We'll be discussing this further in the next few slides. Okay, next slide. According to more statistics from CDC, 14.5% of caregivers reported 14 or more mentally unhealthy days in a month. 17.6% experienced 14 or more physically unhealthy days, and 36.7% reported insufficient amount of sleep. What can caregivers do to stay healthy? Next slide. Caregivers need assistance and need to take breaks. This is important. One way is respite care. Look for a place for your loved one to stay while you take time off. It could be a skilled nursing facility. If this is not a chore for you, then find a family member or members who are willing to take care of your loved one while you're away for a few days. Always allow family and friends to assist with daily care. Ask a family member or friend to come visit with your loved one for a specific period of time. If it could be a weekly schedule or it could be sporadic. It's up to you, whichever works for you. For example, if your loved one likes to bowl, ask a friend to take your loved one bowling for an afternoon. That's just an example. It could be anything specific to what your loved one enjoys doing. Also, make sure you consult your doctor that you have become a caregiver. Your doctor will give you tips for maintaining your health. Look for nonprofit organizations or government agencies who provide services that would fit with what you're looking for your loved one. It could be a day program, a senior center with activities, or other organizations like that. Also look for caregiver support group. The Brain Injury Association of North Carolina hosts a virtual statewide caregiver support group every month. It's the third Tuesday of each month from 11 a.m. until 12. This is a way for you to go on virtually and not have to worry about transportation or being away from your loved one. You can go on our website for more information at www.beyond.net and look for the support group tab. Finally, develop a care plan for your loved one. Next slide. The care plan, we have a link here, but I don't think we're able to get to it. And like I said, you can go to cdc.gov and then type in complete care plan. This is an electronic plan that you can develop. One of them is a complete care plan, and then there's a daily care plan. Both are important. The complete care plan shows information about the person receiving care. It summarizes the person's health conditions and current treatments. It is an important tool to have, especially if more than one person is caring for the person. The form is available on the CDC website, like I said, and can be completed electronically. It is important to keep the plan updated and current. The daily care plan is exactly what it says. It is a shortened version of the complete care plan listing important information about daily care, which will include the medical conditions, medications, emergency contacts, medical power of attorney, and insurance information. The daily plan should be available to all the caregivers or family members that come in and work with the individual. Also, the electronic version of the plans are available on the CDC website. Next slide. Remember, it is important to take care of yourself in order to be an effective caregiver. Your loved one is counting on you. Next slide. Okay, now I want to talk a little bit about general or statewide resources. The Brain Injury Association of North Carolina provides a resource guide, which is on our website. And you can go to www.beyond.net for all this information. And the resource guide, it gives you a list of resources that we have found in North Carolina. And there are different categories that you can click on, such as if you're looking for a neurologist or looking for a psychiatrist, or if you're looking for transportation, we have some links for you in the resource guide. Also, we have a list of support groups. And there's, like Lauren was saying, there's an abundance of training and educational opportunities. And there's educational material and handouts that you can click on and print if you need that. We also have an Unmasking Brain Injury project ongoing. This project gives an opportunity for the person with brain injury to tell his or her story by painting, decorating the mask, and providing a narrative of his or her journey with brain injury. These masks are taken with us throughout the state, telling the story to others. It's amazing when people see these masks displayed. We don't even have to say anything. The masks tell the whole story for us and for you and for the person with brain injury. We also have an outreach activities in the community, mostly virtual at this time, but will hopefully begin in person in the coming months. These activities include brain injury and prevention that we provide to the community. And the Brain Injury also hosts events. And again, you can go to our website and sign up for an e-newsletter so that you can stay updated. Our membership program is in the process of being revised. We want to reach every person in North Carolina who's living with a brain injury. We invite these individuals to sign up for a complimentary membership. The membership connects the person with the Brain Injury Association. This connection ensures that communication is starting and is ongoing, making sure the resources are given available, information is provided, and that he or she is aware of current events going on throughout the state. Of course, we have other memberships for family members and professionals, and you can check this out at the same web address, www.beyond.net. And then there's the TBI screening, which is underway at the LME-MCO. This screening helps to identify individuals who have a brain injury or may have a brain injury and are not aware of it. The screening starts a process of diagnosis and provides needed resources for the individual. There are also supports available to include, of course, the LME-MCO, the North Carolina TBI waiver, the Brain Injury Association of America, and Brainline. So be sure to check each of these areas out for additional information. Next slide. The Brain Injury Association of North Carolina, or BEONC, as we're sometimes called, is available to assist with resources, support, group information, education, training, etc. Like I said, www.beyond.net for more information. Next slide. Here's my contact information. I'll be more than happy to assist in any way that I can or guide you to the appropriate resources or services. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lauren and Sandy, for that presentation. We do want to take some time to offer opportunity for questions and answers at this time. So what we are asking is if you will raise your hand, we will unmute you if you have questions, and we will let you speak to the panelists at this time. So we'll take a brief opportunity to offer opportunity for questions. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Bowman, would you like to unmute and ask your question?
I think I unmuted. I think I unmuted.
Yes, you did. Do you have a question?
I think I unmuted. Okay. Is that you, Beth?
Ma'am. Would you like to type your answer or your question into the Q&A? We're getting a lot of feedback.
Ms. Bowman, if you would, place your question in the question and answer box. We seem to have some trouble with your unmuting. If you would, type your question in and we'll respond. If anyone else has a question, if you would, raise your hand. We'll try it again.
Yeah, unmuted.
You are.
Yeah, I had a question about, and this is more partners rather than the Brain Injury Association of North Carolina. But I noticed within the website there are a care coordination, care managers, and different individuals that help with coordinating services. I noticed they're usually divided in mental health and development disability. I guess my question is, I was wondering if there's ever a care coordinator for traumatic brain injury. And one reason I asked that rather than development disability or mental health, that individuals with traumatic brain injury may have both. They may have consideration that fit in development disability. They may also fit into mental health category. But oftentimes individuals may have multiple needs, not just within the mental health spectrum, such as rehabilitation services like physical therapy, speech therapy, occupational therapy, or physical challenges and transportation. And so, but I don't ever notice that. I just wonder if there's a care coordination for traumatic brain injury or brain injury in general.
Travis, this is Tammy Wellman. To answer your question, it's based on the individual's needs of which care management department is serving that member. We do have the mental health SU care managers. We have intellectual developmental disability care managers, and we also have what we call episodic care managers. And that's just, we provide those types of care management just to assist, like with the episodic, if there's any crisis or immediate needs for like resources or navigating, trying to get residential supports or day services supports. We do have episodic care manager, which are really short-term care management service agency services. But we have what we call our IDD care management, which is more of a long-term care manager, and MHSU care managers. Did that answer your question? But we don't have anyone deemed as just traumatic brain injury care management.
And would that be in consideration or possibility, or does it have to be within substance abuse, developmental disability, or mental illness?
For right now, it's in those actual categories. We have not rolled out the TBI waiver. So once that particular services roll out, we may have someone deemed as a TBI care manager. But for right now, it is one of those departments.
Just one more question. What is the difference between care manager and care coordinator?
Care coordinator is just mainly just assisting them. We have care coordination for members that are on our registry of unmet needs. They will be called care coordinators, just coordinating just the day and residential support services while they're waiting for services. But care management is ongoing level of care management, just managing the service needs or the delivery of the services and completing like individual support plans, care plans.
I'll just mention one reason. I maybe should mention just to begin with. The reason I asked that question, I know the Brain Injury Association kind of helps with this, but I did some research with disability rights in North Carolina, and that is one of the biggest, top 3 needs is care coordination for people with traumatic brain injury and acquired brain injury, other brain injuries also.
Yes.
Travis had another question that was in the Q&A. And is there a TBI or in general brain injury clubhouse or day program in partners in any county that Partners serves?
Yeah, I know. So I know that there's very few clubhouses, specific brain injury clubhouses in North Carolina. There's one particular that I know in the Triangle area. And that is why we kind of looked at the virtual day program that we're running through Heinz Beat Farm. That is free access to use. So I encourage you guys to look at that. I can put the link in the chat for Thriver Survivor. Other types of day programs are available in that catchment area. I was just looking to see if there's anything in the new, since you guys just incorporated Forsyth County and the other counties, if there was something there that potentially you could access. There are a lot of just adult day programs that are available. And so if that's something that in your area that you're interested in connecting to, but maybe they don't have a lot of experience with brain injury, we'd be happy to facilitate any sort of training or help them feel more comfortable so that that individual can be served in the county that they are closest to if it is part of the Partners program. So I don't know if Sandy, you have any additional ideas for the day programs and things like that, but that would be my initial thoughts.
Yeah, same here. We're always looking for programs for individuals, especially with day programs. And as the TBI waiver rolls out even more across the state, hopefully we'll be gathering more and more providers and more services, because brain injury will be more on the minds of individuals and professionals. And hopefully we can span out and get more providers trained on brain injury.
A couple of more questions. I just want to say that we will send out a copy of the presentation, and then our recording will be posted on our website. And then also, the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation provides brain injury support services for employment. So thank you for sharing that. And then there was another question. Our son is 45 years old, a victim of shaken baby at age 3 months and is developmentally delayed. He also has extreme anxiety disorder and ADHD. His developmental pediatrician is retiring and has been managing his medication for many years. He has provided a list of potential psychiatrists, but I wonder if you have recommendations for persons living in Surry County under Partners.
This is Sandy from the Brain Injury Association. Not one right offhand, but if you will notify me or give me a call, email me. I'll be glad to make sure that we research that area to see what we can come up with to assist you with that.
And then another question is, isn't care management coordination under tailored plan? TBI is included in tailored plan specifically.
Yes, TBI is included in the tailored plan. We will have care managers assigned to TBI, but it wouldn't just be an exclusive TBI care manager.
Then another comment is Heinz Feet Farm in Harrisburg has day programs, and it is in Cabarrus County. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you. We're going to take a brief moment and give Ann an opportunity to identify some winners of the prize.
Take myself off mute first. So good afternoon, everyone. Wow, what a lot of great information. So let's have just a little bit of fun here for a minute. I am going to spin an incredible prize wheel, and we're going to be sharing with you some partners swag. This is just an example of one of those things. It's a water bottle. We have a few other things too. We're going to fill a bag full for you. So let me share my screen. We'll do a little spin. I have dropped everybody's names in our wheel here. So let me just give it a quick click and it can pick our winner. Here we go. So it looks like Lenore, I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, Lenore T is our winner. Lenore, we will reach out to you via email to get confirm your mailing address so we can send that info out to you, or that the swag out to you. So thanks, y'all. I will let you all move back to the important information.
Thank you so much, Ann, and congratulations on our first winner. We've got a couple of more, so stay with us for the rest of the presentation, and you'll have an opportunity as well to win some partner swag. Our next speakers will be Tammy Wellman and Sarah Wilson. Tammy Wellman is the IDD Systems Manager at Partners. She oversees the registry and referral, transitions, and the supports intensity teams at Partners, and she has over 30 years experience. Sarah Wilson serves as the Utilization Manager at Partners and oversees the Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities Utilization Management team at Partners, and Sarah brings 20 years of experience plus to the tables. So welcome to our presentation today, Tammy and Sarah.
Thank you, Jerry. Also, I'd like to say thank you to Laura and also to Sandy, and congrats, Lenore. What I'll be talking about, and this is coming from just Partners, what we actually do as far as trying to get individuals engaged in services at Partners, or what talked about the TBI waiver and or the IDD innovations waiver. But what I just want to talk about is mainly we work with the individuals with traumatic brain injury, which we call a TBI, and that's a brain injury caused by a blunt force trauma to the head directly or indirectly. And what Laura talked about earlier is some of the different causes. And she mentioned the car accidents, or assaults, or domestic violence, sports injury, falls, or combat. And when Partners screening or trying to identify individuals that has a TBI, when you call in, we do what we call is a TBI screening assessment. And we're using what we call the Ohio screening tool, and it was developed by the Ohio State University. And some of the questions that we will be asking is, and this is not limited to, I'm just gonna, just maybe mention a few. One of the questions says, in your lifetime, have you ever been hospitalized or treated in an emergency room following an injury to your head or neck? And also they ask you to think about any childhood injuries you remember or you were told about. Another question is, if in your lifetime, have you ever injured your head or neck in a fall or being hit by something, for example, falling from a bike or horse, rollerblading, falling on ice, being hit by a rock? And these are some of the things that we use to actually screen or identify individuals for a traumatic brain injury. After the screening, if you answer yes to any of these questions, and like I said, it's not limited to the ones that I just mentioned, we will then ask you about documentation. And we will ask if you have any documentation regarding your TBI diagnosis. And this is required. And the documentation could be from a hospitalization, a rehabilitation center, a neurologist, and the list goes on. And the documentation could be any type of evaluation, an assessment. And Bianca addressed this before initially in their presentation. So whenever we're doing a TBI screening and trying to identify, we do ask for this information to be submitted to our registry specialist. And they will be the ones that will try to see if you are interested in service and try to find out which services that would probably be more appropriate for you, or and if you're a caregiver that's calling in, your loved one. Next slide. I want to talk about in partners, which is an LME MCO local management entity managed care organization. What we do is manage or identify for the 2 waiver programs. And what I want to talk about is the types of waivers. Everybody's probably heard about the North Carolina TBI waiver, and it is authorized by Medicaid Home and Community-Based Services and is granted by the Centers for Medicaid and Medicare and Medicaid Services, which you probably heard as CMS. This particular program has been piloted by Alliance Health LME MCO since May of 2018. And the areas that they cover are Cumberland, Durham, Johnson, Mecklenburg, Orange, and Wake County. And since 2021, we went through a county realignment, and that's when they added Mecklenburg and Orange County. With the TBI waiver, it is not in all counties, and it's not in all LME MCO coverage areas. But hopefully the state will be expanding this within the next 5 years to more counties or more LME MCOs. Next slide. The qualifications for the TBI waiver, you must be eligible for Medicaid. And recently, the state of North Carolina submitted the TBI waiver to CMS with a few adjustments or a few changes. And one of the recent changes is the poverty level for Medicaid. It's now at poverty level of 300. And they must have sustained a TBI on or after it was 22nd birthday, but one of the revisions or changes to the waiver is dropping it to age 18. So you must have sustained a TBI on or after your 18th birthday. And you must meet the following criteria. One of the criteria is a nursing facility or a neurobehavioral level of care. And you must be an adult who meets a specialty rehabilitation hospital skilled nursing level of care. Next slide. Some of the services, before we go on, some of the services that falls under the actual TBI waiver that may be different from the North Carolina Innovations waiver is this particular program has speech and language therapy. It has in-home intensive services, life skills training, occupational therapy, and a cognitive rehabilitation therapy. That's just the name of the few that's a little different than the North Carolina Innovations waiver. Now, let me talk about the other waiver, which is the North Carolina Innovations waiver. And this is one that Partners is providing at this particular time. And we have care managers that actually, we have probably almost 100 care managers within Partners that does serve members with under the North Carolina Innovations waiver. And this particular program is similar. It's a federally approved Medicaid home and community-based services waiver, and it was designed to meet the needs of individuals with intellectual or developmental disabilities who prefer to get long-term care services and support in their home or community rather than living in an institutional setting. Qualifications, which is similar to the TBI waiver, you must be eligible for Medicaid. Individuals diagnosed with a traumatic brain injury before the age of 22, or now is before the age of 18, may be eligible for the IDD services. They must meet intermediate care facility or individuals with intellectual developmental disability, and which we call it ICF, IID level of care. And results in substantial functioning limitation in 3 or more of the following areas: life activities, which is self-care, expressive language, receptive and expressive language, capacity for independent living, learning, mobility, self-direction, and economic self-sufficiency. Just a little information about the Innovations waiver. Slots are very limited. So Partners maintains a waiting list, and slots are assigned on a first come, first served basis. So any new slots must be approved by the North Carolina General Assembly. So if you meet the criteria for the North Carolina Innovations waiver based on these qualifications that I just mentioned, I highly recommend or encourage you to contact our registry specialist so that you can get on the waiting list for these services. Like I just mentioned, it is first come, first serve. Next slide, please. Sarah will be talking about some of the services that we have available for individuals with a traumatic brain injury.
Thank you, Tammy. Okay, we're going to talk about a couple of different things. The first service funding source that we're going to talk about is B3 services. B3 services are available if you have Medicaid. And what's interesting about these is the first group here, which talks about support employment, community navigator, B3 community transition, in-home skill building. Those services, the individual does need to meet the ICF IID level of care. And the one criteria is that they must have sustained their TBI prior to their 22nd birthday. The other one over here is B3 respite. That one specifically, you have to meet criteria in General Statute 122C 12A, which indicates that the TBI can be sustained at any age. And then we have on here also B3 individual supports. And that's actually an MH service. So you do not have to meet functional eligibility, but if you are, if you have a dual diagnosis and have had a TBI, that would be a service that might be available to you. And then here is the link to the benefit grids. The benefit grids on our provider knowledge base actually lay out our entire service array. And Beth, can we put that link in the chat? Thank you. Okay, the next one, next service is long-term community supports. And to be eligible for long-term community supports, you do have to have Medicaid. It's a Medicaid B in lieu of service, and it is in lieu of ICF placement, which is that intermediate care facility. So ICF IID level of care is required. So your TBI would need to be sustained prior to age 22 with substantial functional limitations. The service is available to adults age 22 and older. And long-term community supports is a very interesting service. It is one that Partners created as in lieu of ICF level of care. And there are 5 levels to the service. Level 1 is for day activity. So if you want a meaningful day activity and you live in a private home, this would be, and you have Medicaid, this may be a service that may be of interest to you. The higher levels, level 3 is, oh, I just drew a blank on it. Level 3 is like alternative family living. Levels 4 and 5 are group living. Thank you, Tammy. I saw you coming off mute there to help me. And level 2 is supervised living. On here is the link to the service definitions, and this includes all of our service definitions for all of the B3 services that may be of interest, as well as the long-term community supports definition is on that link also. We also have state-funded services that are available. These are very limited funds with the state funds. You do need to meet functional eligibility criteria in General Statute 122C. The TBI can be sustained at any age, and there is the link to our state-funded IDD benefit grid, so you can see the array of services. State-funded services, though, if you do reach out to a provider, there are wait lists for the state-funded services because the state funds are very limited that we receive from the state. And those links will be put in the chat as soon as possible. I feel bad, I kind of threw that on Beth at the last minute, real sorry. Okay, and then we're going to talk about TBI funding. TBI funding is an allocation that's given from the state. They are very limited funds. Currently, all funds for fiscal year 22 have been fully allocated. We run on a fiscal calendar, so it's from July 1st is when the funds restart. They are for reoccurring or one-time expenses. As funding becomes available, Partners does notify the providers through our provider communication bulletin. They will be, and there'll be a call for applications. So the provider fills out the application for the TBI funding, and if they are approved, then they're given money for services for that fiscal year. There is a link there to our TBI funding guidelines and application. And going through some of the next slide. Going through some of our funding guidelines. Priority is given for funding to members who do not have access to any home and community-based services and supports. So if you are on the innovations waiver, TBI funding is not available. Priority is given to those who are not on the innovations waiver. Funding will not be used for services or supports covered by Medicaid, Medicare, or private insurance. It also cannot be used for services not deemed medically necessary. And funding for supports services are not likely to result in any member's total cost of care exceeding the $135,000 per fiscal year across funding sources. Next slide. Requests for direct service delivery will be considered only if time limited and not to exceed the end of the current fiscal year. For members who sustain the TBI prior to the age of 22, TBI funding will be used only if the member is on the registry of unmet needs, or at a minimum, the process has been initiated to add the member to the registry. For members who sustained their TBI prior to the age of 22 who are Medicaid eligible, The team should evaluate to determine if long-term community supports could meet the members' needs. So for example, if you're asking for a day service and you did have Medicaid, you would not be able to use TBI funding to fund that. It would need to go through long-term community supports because that is available. Okay, Tammy?
Like Sarah, thank you, Sarah. As Sarah mentioned before, in order to get the TBI funding services, you must be on the Register of Unmet Needs or in the process of getting on the Register of Unmet Needs. So how do I get on the Register of Unmet Needs? I know everybody's asking the question. Contact IIDD Registry Work Group line, and that number is 1-833-780-2587, and this is a toll-free. Or you can email our registry team at iddregistry@partnersbhm. And you and or your caregiver or guardian can contact, and what they would do, basically what I mentioned earlier, they would use their Ohio screening tool and ask a series of questions. If you're eligible for the innovations waiver based on the sustaining the TBI prior to the age of 22, then they will actually add you to our wait list for that particular program. If you sustained your injury after the age of 22, which would not qualify for the innovations waiver, we're identifying individuals, and this is in preparation for the rolling out of the North Carolina TBI waiver, so that we will have the information when it does expand into partners coverage area. And they will ask for the documentation up front to be submitted, and that information will be maintained in our system. Now, if you have any questions, we will entertain those questions.
We have had somebody patiently waiting to ask her question. I'm going to open your mic and allow you to talk. So give me just 1 second. All right, Ms. Pruitt, you are free to ask your question. And if not, I can read what you have entered into the Q&A. Okay. 26-year-old daughter has been having seizures for several months and was never able to find a reason or a cause. She hit concrete floors numerous times and is having residual things. And then also, I don't know if she was diagnosed with a TBI since they were hyper-focused on the seizures. How do I achieve this with her?
If there's any, I know you mentioned that you were mainly getting the treatment for the seizure disorder. We do encourage you to call our registry specialist. If there's any type of medical documentation that talks about the seizure disorder or talking about the possibility of any concussions or any type of TBI, that information will be useful. And I do encourage to go ahead and contact our registry department to get your daughter on our Register of Unmet Needs list.
I'm going to mute you again, Ms. Pruitt. And oh, she has mentioned that her mental health has worsened.
Yes, I do encourage you to contact our registry team and submit the documentation to get on the Register of Unmet Needs.
Also, there was a correction that Heinz Feet is in Huntersville in Mecklenburg. And then the next question is B3 services go away in December. Are the I waiver services different, or are qualifications different? Are they limited, or are they an entitlement?
We are going to be having in the future more guidance on the I services. At the current moment, Tammy, do you have anything you want to add about the I services? But B3 does go away when it comes to when Taylor Plan launches. You know that.
Exactly. No, there's nothing, I don't have anything to add at this time.
And the next question is the TBI fund limited to innovations eligibility by statute? Is it the fund not available? Is the fund not available to those injured after 22?
So the TBI funding availability priority is given to those who are not on the innovations waiver. So by the time we're done allocating, most likely if you're on the innovations waiver, there's no funding left because the need is so high. And Beth, I actually see the next question. Can I go ahead and answer that one too?
Absolutely.
So they asked, can individuals apply for TBI funds for equipment or services not otherwise covered? Yes, the TBI funding application and guidelines are on our provider knowledge base on the utilization management page. And a link to that we are going to put up here as soon as I can get it. But I will put the link to the funding guidelines and the application and process. It is, please read the guidelines very carefully and the required paperwork that needs to accompany the application.
You're muted, Beth.
The next question is, our friends have a son with autism who is nonverbal. He is 18 and has been on the waiting list in Stokes County for innovations since he was 3. How does that work when Stokes services have been taken by another LME? Will his place in unmet needs list start over?
Okay. We recently went through county realignment with some counties from that came over from Cabarrus, Stanley, Union, and Forsyth and Davie. And as far as the actual date and time that they were added to the register of unmet needs in Cardinals catchment area, we transferred that information over to our register of unmet needs. So to give you an example, if we had a member that was waiting since the age of 3 with Cardinal, they're now 10 years old, we will honor the date that they were added to the register of unmet needs. And so what I encourage your neighbor or family friend to do is contact the LME MCO that took over, that Stokes is now aligned with, and find out to make sure that they are on the register of unmet needs in that particular LME MCO.
Another question is, if someone is already on the registry of unmet needs, how do they obtain a community navigator? Does community navigator include face-to-face visits and a person-centered plan, or is a community navigator just phone communication?
Community navigator could be face-to-face. Prior to the actual pandemic, community navigator was face-to-face, and a lot of provider agency has started going back to face-to-face contact, and some provider agencies have not, but community navigator can be face-to-face contact.
Next question is, can you clarify, is CAP-DA disabled adults still an option for TBI if TBI waiver is not available in our county yet?
The CAP-DA has a criteria, so what I do is just recommend contacting the provider agency that's doing CAP-DA in the county in which you reside, and contact them to let them know what the individual's needs are and to see if they actually qualify. But yes, it could be another service option for individuals that need some type of support, but that don't need, right now, we don't have the TBI waiver in this area.
And yes, we will include the information in an email that we will send out to all of our participants. So you will have a copy of the PowerPoint slides. You will have a copy of all of the information that we have put in the chat. And the recording will be on our website. Is there any more questions?
Thank you, Tammy and Sarah. We're going to go ahead. It doesn't look like there's any current questions. If anyone does have any questions, because we recognize that there's a lot of opportunity for questions. And then once you've had a chance to look at the information we send out, it may generate questions. So feel free to email moving forward. And so this is not the close. This is just the beginning. So please feel free to email us with any questions that you have with the emails that are included. And we'll be happy to answer any questions you have moving forward. Now we're going to turn it back over to Ann Glove, and she's going to have some fun with us.
All right, let me share the fabulous wheel of fun, and we'll give it a spin.
While you're pulling up your wheel, and Beth, I was thinking there was another question about the application. Are they asking for about the TBI funds application?
Beth, you're muted again.
I'm assuming that's what that means.
We'll take that feedback. Thank you.
All right, so let's give our wheel a spin. Ooh, close. So is Grace T. So congrats to you, Grace. And I am just going to close this down quickly and bring it back to the great information that everybody is sharing.
And actually, Ann, I'm going to ask you to go ahead and spin it a third time.
All right, one more time. Let me just go right back there. Guess I jumped the gun just a little bit there. All right, so one more time. So Jay, you are our third winner. So congrats to Lenore, Grace, and Lisa.
Thank you so much, Ann, for doing that for us. And congratulations to all the winners. And also thank you to each of our presenters, Lauren, Sandy, Sarah, and Tammy. Thank you for the wonderful information. And again, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to follow up on those. A few final notes for things. You will see a link to a survey. It's Partners Annual Survey. And if you'll complete that link by 5 p.m. this Friday, you'll be registered for the opportunity to win some special prizes from the Partners Swag Department. And Beth just put that in the chat box. You should be able to see that. And also, as soon as this webinar closes, There will be a brief survey from partners, and this helps us make these presentations better for you in the future. So if you would take a few seconds, it's a very brief survey. As soon as that happens, and like I said, take a few minutes to do that to help us make these presentations better. If there's no other things to be done, then thank you all for coming to our webinar today, and have a good afternoon.